Hi, True Northers. Today we are going to be speaking with Anita Owour. We are going to talk about the person of the therapist. This is a topic which clients and patients of psychotherapy, as well as psychotherapists themselves, can benefit from. So let's start from the top. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you.
Let us start from you introducing yourself. Who is Anita?
My name is Anita Owour. I'm a psychologist. I work a lot with children, but over the years I've also worked with families and couples. And for some reason I tend to gravitate towards trauma. So I've worked a lot with trauma clients as well.
Super. Thank you. So our first question, what is the person of the therapist?
The person of the therapist is how we use our own experiences and our own lives in the therapeutic process. It's how we use what we have gone through. Some people would call it our shortcomings or our things we struggle with, but how we use them in the therapeutic process to make us better practitioners.
Okay. So I've really been thinking about this issue, and I'm thinking our teaching basically tells us that we cannot bring our person to the therapeutic process. There's even a name for it. And we are told once that happens, we should immediately refer the client. We should immediately run for supervision. What's your response to that in relation to the pot?
I have come to realize that the more we use who we are, the more authentic we are, the better practitioners we become. When we try to deny certain experiences or try to hide from them, we'll think about them more, they'll interfere with the process more. It's not saying that when someone comes with something in the process that touches a nerve, we start telling our story, but more we use it to ask better questions. We use it to be more empathetic. We use it to be better people and better practitioners.
Thank you so much. So where we are as a country right now, I think the general understanding is that if I come to see you because you're a therapist, and then you tell me you're also struggling, I think the general assumption would be, well, how can you help me if you yourself are struggling? Like, how is this going to happen? Nani atasaidia mwingine?
I don't know if it's about sharing what I'm struggling, but more acknowledging it to myself.
I see.
And more thinking about how what I have been through and how I have worked through it or still working through it can help my clients. I might not necessarily share it, but I'll be able to use it in the process because I'm aware of it.
Okay. When I think about our Kenyan context, we are, well, Kenyans. We are more of Kenyans than non-Kenyans. And we have national, and regional or county issues that expose us a lot to everyday experiences that are the same reasons that bring people to our offices in the first place. And what I mean, for example, is post-election violence, sexual assault, internal displacement of people, violence of a physical nature, be it family, domestic, spousal. How is it that we can do this whilst we are in the same environment that is creating conditions for people to be exposed to trauma?
For me, maybe it's being aware that each of the things that you've mentioned affects different people differently, and the way in which it affects the person that comes into my practice is what I want to work with. Not necessarily this is violence, so this is what I'm meant to do, but I need to hear the person's story from their point of view, and then see where my experiences can, if we're talking about pot, where my experiences can help them become better people or change their lives to become better people.
Right. You know, when I ask you that question, I remember how in 2017, when there was all this drama, politics on the streets, I think it was in September, when we were having those post-election skirmishes, and I was caught up in a ball of tear gas. And I was so angry. I was like, this is not supposed to be happening to me. You know, I was minding my own business and, you know, I was tear gassed. And I remember like feeling so bad about it 2 days later, to a point of tears. And then much later, having to deal with somebody who was physically and sexually assaulted in that. And I remember bringing my own experience in that space and how much of a difference it made in the process, because all of a sudden it was an issue of, oh, I didn't suffer this myself, you also suffered it. I mean, not the physical and the whatever, but you also caught up in that thing. You know, it's so ugly. And you know, so we had that shared sort of experience in the sense of being caught up in this post-election violence. And I think, I don't know, I saw that add a bit of value, and it also brought back memories of my military days, where, you know, I'm with the soldiers and whatever they're going through, I'm going through, but somehow I'm supposed to rise above what I'm going through to be able to provide them therapeutic help. And I was like, wait, this is interesting. So, in your view, should we as therapists work as hard as we can to almost insulate ourselves from life in order to become better therapists? Or do you think that we should be able to, in a sense, identify what we are struggling with for the purposes of being intentional about injecting it in the therapeutic space, and why?
I definitely don't think it's about insulating ourselves from life. I think the more we live life, the more we can help our clients live their life. And I don't think we have to bring in every experience or have been through every experience our client has been through. So a client comes in with divorce, I don't have to be divorced. A client comes in with sexual assault, I don't have to be sexually assaulted. But I can empathize and understand the feelings they're experiencing, the pain, the trauma, the anger, the bitterness, the sadness. I can empathize with that, with certain experiences of my life. And that's what needs to come into the therapy session.
Okay. Then why are psychologists not leaving offices, schools, and like corporate offices to go out into the community? Because some of them just don't want to go out there because they are like, it will be too hard. They don't want to go out in development settlements, underdeveloped settlements. They don't want to go to IDP camps. They don't want to go to makeshift maybe mortuary spaces in case of like mass loss of life. They don't want to go near the theater of skirmishes. And it's all in the name of, I don't want to deal with that which is out there that is untamed.
I think there's that, but I think also we are often raised to not push for things and to not rock the boat.
Interesting.
We're raised to complain in our circles and then not do anything.
Right. Naha.
So the more we complain, the more we think we're doing something, but then we don't go out and do anything.
Right.
And so when we help in our own little circle, we think that we have done something. And yet
Correct.
there's so, like you say, there's so much untamed out there that each one of us can help in one small way. And even being authentic in your practice is difficult. Even at the same time, going out into the world and out into different parts of Kenya is also, and being authentic there
Right.
is also difficult.
Hmm.
But we each have a part to play, and maybe for each of us, it's recognizing what that part is.
Yeah. Because the sense I get is that the anticipated anxiety is, how is this environment going to react with my own internal setup, like my own psychological setup, and how do we intervene in the mental health crisis that is in our country right now if we don't go out there and see it and feel it and understand it and relate to it. And that's how I feel like the pot is powerful in that sense, because it doesn't mean you have to go through it to understand it, but it means that even if you go through it, you will understand it, connect with it, and still keep it professional. That's what the pot teaches me. So, you said earlier that the client may not necessarily get to know what your struggles are that you're bringing to the therapeutic session. So, speaking as a client or as a patient, is there any point where, as a therapist, you would let me in on it?
I do.
So, okay.
We had so many, even when we were learning, when I was in class, we had so many different views on this. I think because I work with children, when they ask me the question, have you ever struggled with anger? Have you ever struggled with, I don't know, with hitting your sibling?
Yeah.
And I have. I can't say no.
Yeah.
And I can't say, okay, this is not about me, it's about you.
Right.
I think that's a terrible answer.
Right.
Anyway, I think, so there are times I'll say yes, and this is what I did. And there are times I didn't do it properly.
Right.
But I learned these skills with people. I learned these skills later on in life, and I wish I'd learned them earlier, and you're lucky you're learning them now.
Right.
But yes, so there are times that I do. There are times that me as a therapist, I have to be aware that when people come in, especially if they're dealing with the same things as me, to not ask questions to know more for me,
Right.
but to keep them therapeutic.
Right. It's self-awareness, yeah.
So sometimes that can be that, making that connection. And I remember being told, wear your psychological hat the minute you walk through the door, and it's true. That's all I have to do every single time.
Right.
So yes, there are times it's not, what I share will not take more than a minute.
Right.
So it's not my whole life story, and it's not then them saying, oh my God, that was so hard. No, it's just
Yeah.
a matter of fact, yes, I have dealt with anger in my marriage. I don't think I do that, but as an example, yes,
Yeah.
I've seen, dealt with anger in my marriage, and this is how I learned to communicate better.
Right.
If I feel, and it's very rarely, but yes, there are times I have done it, and I feel I have better sessions for it.
Right. I mean, and so you're basically saying it has to be intentional, and it has to be for the benefit of the client and the overall therapeutic process.
Yes.
Very good. My next question, what is a signature theme?
A signature theme is part of what? Part of person of the therapist, and it is, I think the simplest way to describe it is something that you live your life by. So it could be like the fear of rejection, it could be the need to be in control, it could be the need to be a mother all the time, it could be, and again it comes back to what have your life experiences done to make you become this kind of person? And how does it then also affect the way you are in therapy and the way you are in your everyday life?
Yeah. How do you think it affects the therapist when they are not aware of their signature theme?
Well, if their signature theme is the fear of rejection, so often in practice, in private practice, a person will come 2 or 3 times, feel they're better, and stop coming. And you have not terminated properly. You call once, you call twice, and maybe you'll stop, maybe you'll keep calling.
Right.
How will it affect the practice? The person who is afraid of rejection will blame themselves.
Right.
The person who is aware of the signature theme and aware of this fear will think about it and think, is it me, is it us, is it the process,
Right.
is it the client,
Right.
what can I do to make myself a better therapist in the next? How can I keep them coming for however long they need to come to make to finish the process? But that one especially, for a long time you blame yourselves, and you have to develop a thick skin. But the only way is to be aware of it.
Right. How does the therapist go about identifying their signature theme?
There are so many articles on it. There are certain questions you can ask about fears you may have, anxieties you may have, what kinds of things you try to keep people from knowing about yourself, how you cope when you're stressed, and all these questions then will generally have a basic answer and will lead you to what your signature theme might be.
Is it something that therapists can do by themselves, or is it best accomplished in an individual clinical supervision or a group clinical supervision?
I think you can do it yourself. I think it's best done with a person who has trained in this or who at least knows about it, and I think it's even better in a group.
Yeah.
I learned it. We did an elective class in my program on supervision, and the person trained us on person of a therapist, and we got to ask these questions in class and share it with the class. Was that difficult? Yes. Did you have to be vulnerable? Yes. But it changed my work as a therapist.
Do you think it's necessary for therapists?
I do. Why? Because the more you know about yourself, the more you're able to help the person who is sitting across from you.
Okay.
Or the more you're aware, and the simplest example I can give is, if any of you out there diet, the first day, what are you going to think about? That cake you can't have, that coffee you can't have, whatever it is you're trying to give up.
Right.
That you're trying to put at your back of your mind.
Right.
And so the more you're able then to say, acknowledge, yes, I'm on a diet, I want this cake right now, but I'm just going to walk away. Or whatever it is you say to yourself to walk away. You'll think about it less and say, no, I'm not thinking about the cake. I'm not thinking about the cake.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what happens when we deny these things that are affecting us.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be big things about culture or religion, or they can be small intangible things where every time a person mentions, I don't know, how they're fighting with their mom, you want to say you can't fight with your mom because
Right.
culturally you can't fight with your
Right.
mom. There's a signature theme somewhere in there.
Right.
Every time someone says, I do not want to talk to my dad because he did all these things to me.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, you must talk to your parent.
Right. You become prescriptive, essentially.
Yes.
Yes.
Based on your prescription.
Right.
Not what the client needs right there.
Correct. That's interesting, because some people may say, oh, but I go for personal supervision. I don't need this.
Well, if your personal supervision is not bringing you to think about the areas in yourself that might be affecting your therapy, you need to continue in supervision and
Or get a new supervisor.
or get a new supervisor
Yeah.
or try and do this for yourself and bring it into your supervision.
Right. Or bring it into your group and see how that goes. It's a very interesting thing that I discovered the other day. In 2017, we had the Acumen Global Gathering that was in Naivasha. And then we had this human rights lawyer. His name is Brian Stevenson. Brian with a Y. And he talked about, himself and his work and his grandma. And he talked about how he was doing human rights work essentially out of his woundedness.
Yeah.
And how in the process of doing the work, it wounded him, but it also healed his wounds, and that's how he was able to continue with the work. And he's a lawyer. Listening to him, I was like, how can he know this? How can he know this? This guy is not a psychologist. How can he know this? By the time he was finished speaking, I was bawling, oh my God, just crying. I was just like, oh my God. And then I'm thinking, I'm the only one who has been touched by his words, and I've connected my profession and my practice with him. And then I turn around, I look to my left, to my right, people are bawling. I look behind me, people are just, and I'm like, the signature themes, they are not only for therapists. He taught me that identifying signature themes and leveraging them, understanding the person of the lawyer, understanding the person of the doctor, understanding the person of the teacher, understanding the person of the pilot, all those things come from a very deep-rooted place. And anybody from any profession can benefit from this process. What do you think?
I think anyone can benefit from this process. And I think about the people who have touched your lives the most.
Yeah.
The doctors, the pilots, anyone. Most of them will have told you something about their life, something that they have struggled with, or something they have overcome. Think about even the most famous people. They will always share in an authentic way, and we will know when it's not.
Right.
They will share something about their lives.
Yes.
And that makes us connect to them in some way.
That makes us connect with them in some way. So, does that connection have to be transformational? Or is that where now we set aside psychotherapy in the person of the therapist and leave everything else out? Or can everybody do the transformation bit?
The transformation bit has to come from yourself, from the person. It has to come from me, it has to come from you, it has to come from my client. I can't make them transform. I might share my life, they're still not ready to transform.
Right.
But you might share exactly the same thing 10 days later, and that's what transforms them.
Right.
So I think each person, maybe they have to be ready. Maybe they have to be at a place where they want to look within themselves and see how, instead of looking at their experiences as something negative and letting their experiences define them, they help them to become better people or change people's lives or use them for the better. And I think that's what this lawyer did.
Right.
So your experiences then help the next person and the next person, as opposed to, no, this happened to me, I can't talk about it, I can't share it, I can't.
Right.
And every single person who has shared an experience, or maybe even cried about the experience, does it make you look at them as a weaker person or a stronger person?
Good question.
I think that vulnerability makes them 1,000% stronger.
Right.
And not weaker.
Right.
And it takes strength to be honest and to be open and to be authentic and to be real.
Emotional honesty is work.
Yeah.
I think even some calories are lost. I don't know. We'll have to look into that.
Brain.
Yes. And I think when I think about this whole topic, and I think about how, especially we're in this space right now where there are people who are calling themselves motivational speakers, and that element of connecting with people, and people may have the desire to transform, but they don't have the tools to do it.
Yeah.
Which is where I think psychotherapy comes in, because in a psychotherapeutic session, once you have that awareness, once that unconscious thought bubbles up to consciousness, you're aware and you're like, I need to do something about this. Then psychotherapy sets you up in such a way that you can work on that, as opposed to hearing the message and then sasa enda nyumbani, tumemalizana.
Yeah.
I think for me, I see that as the difference. And it's so distinct, but I think it's important to understand it.
And I think once we learn something or are touched by something, we have to make the choice to use it to change us, or to or yes, like you say, we can go home, pack it and say, yeah, I really wish I could use this, but you just do nothing.
Right.
So in every situation we have a choice on how we let it impact us.
That's true. And I think for me, the message about especially this video is somebody doesn't have to feel like, oh yeah, now that that is over and I got that awakening, well, okay, that's over now, let's move on. I think people need to know they can extend that awakening to make it transformational within a therapeutic setting. And it is best when your therapist understands the person of the therapist and is able to bring that of themselves in an instrumental way, in a very intentional way, and that you as the client or the patient should trust yourself when you pick up something that's not genuine. Like,
Yes.
that, yeah.
And I think they always do. And I think what I've learned, when we're being trained, you look at these people training, you're like, wow, I want to be like that when I grow up. I want to be like that when I become experienced.
Yes.
But unless you bring yourself
Right.
and who you are. So maybe one person is extremely serious. I, as a therapist with certain clients, might crack jokes. I, with another therapist, will be completely serious. And you have to learn to know, unless you know who you are, you can't help them in a real way. And unless you know, and that's what the person of the therapist
Right.
is. It's being real, it's being, even if you think for a second, this is really, there's something happening here, I don't know what it is.
Right.
And then you just say, this one I need to pack for a minute, and then
Right.
I will come back to it later.
Right.
And maybe the next session we'll bring it up and say, I felt, that's what person of the therapist would do. I feel that there was a block here.
Right.
I don't know if it was me, I don't know if you felt it. How can we address that?
And you will never hear them say, no, that was just you, I didn't feel it. They'll say, yeah, by the way, what was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, as in, it's
Yeah.
true. It's true. Wow, fabulous. I'm happy about the conversation. I feel like we have exhausted what it is, why it is, who benefits from it, and when it can be used, by who, and how it is achieved. Have I left anything out in your understanding? Because you know you're the expert here.
I think I'm the expert.
You are. In this case, you are.
No, but it's knowing that anyone can benefit from it, just not just the therapist.
Right.
And that it's not just for me, as much as it's called person of the therapist, I think it's about being real in your interactions and
Right.
knowing what triggers you might have to stop an interaction being authentic. And I think every single time we try and be this strong person who can't let these things come in, our clients know and they feel it, and it'll bring a block.
And it will impact the outcomes of a therapeutic process. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we definitely don't want to do that. Super. Thank you so much, Anita Owour. I appreciate your input on this. I hope everybody watching and listening will also take something away from them. Please feel free to ask Anita questions down below. She will answer. And meanwhile, share and share, and most importantly, be real and be genuine. Thanks, Anita.
Thank you.
Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And they executed him. I held the phone and said, I can't do this anymore. It's just too much. It's too painful, too uncomfortable. I kept thinking about how broken he is. And the question I had in my mind is, why is it that we want to kill all the broken people? What is it about our world that when we see broken people and brokenness, we want to crush it and hurt it and kill it? And then I realized all of my clients are broken people. I represent the broken. My clients have been broken by poverty, broken by racism, broken by neglect, broken by despair. And then I realized I work in a broken system. The people with power are unwilling to get proximate. They're locked into narratives of fear and anger. They've lost their hope. They won't do uncomfortable things. I said, I don't want to have any more to do with this. And I sat down and I was thinking about why I do what I do. And I'd been there a while when all of a sudden I had this new realization and it shocked me. In that moment, I realized something I'd never realized before. I realized why I do what I do. And it stunned me. I realized that I don't do what I do because I've been trained as a lawyer. I don't do what I do because somebody has to do it. I don't do what I do because it's about human rights. I don't do what I do because if I don't do it, no one will. That night I realized something I'd never realized before. What I realized is that I do what I do because I'm broken too. And the truth is, if you get proximate, if you change narratives, if you stay hopeful, if you do uncomfortable things, it will break you. But the power is, it is the broken among us that will truly lead us in how to change the world. It's the broken who understand the power of compassion. It's the broken who understand the power of redemption. It is the broken that will teach us what justice can do to end poverty. It's in brokenness that we understand what it means to be human. And it's therefore why I now claim this call. I claim this profession. I claim this work. As a broken person, I'm not trying to save my clients. I'm trying to save myself. I know that they are my brothers and my sisters, just like you are my brothers and your sisters. I've learned some simple